We 21x this arts and crafts e-commerce brand's Google ad spend in a 30-day period and added over $70,000 in revenue, which is also an 11x month over month, and we're just getting started. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the brand's exact layout, the strategy we implemented step by step, and how we made scale happen. But this brand, just like most of the brands we work with, had the same exact issues that were really preventing this brand from scaling to the very next level. Now, if we look at the period before we started working together, because we actually launched the first campaign for this brand around the 10th to the 11th of June. But prior to that, this brand actually had no previous Google Ads data, because this is a brand that is just getting into the US market from primarily focusing on the Canadian market as well as the Australian market. And the interesting thing that this brand did is, instead of having one ad account with all of the specific different countries getting targeted inside that, they had multiple different ad accounts where, for example, this specific ad account was only for the Canada market, which in the last 30 days we have been scaling to roughly 7,000 to 10,000 Canadian dollars every single month. But in the hopes of keeping things segmented and keeping things clean, we decided to launch a brand new account just for the US market, and with zero data, with mostly in the Canadian market sales coming from branded traffic prior to us working together, which is the situation for most brands. We were able to change that and get a lot more revenue, get a lot more ad spend coming in from the cold market. And the interesting thing about this brand is, if we go onto Google, just type in a singular keyword which can be associated with the products this brand sells, we can see that within this given industry, because it is arts and crafts, the overall average order value historically can be extremely low. I'm talking $1, $2, even $3 on the higher range. So obviously approaching this brand in a general manner like we approach most brands would not have been an ideal situation, because that would have meant Google Ads would not have been a good platform for this brand to scale on. And one of the key things that kind of helped us differentiate this brand from majority of the other sticker brands or the arts and crafts brand was having a bigger focus on product, which were a little bit more expensive in general. And as we see right here, the product ranges anywhere from $22, $24 to even on the lower range, $13, so on and so forth. This is because instead of selling individual stickers, we decided to focus on the kits, sort of like bundles, because the single most important metric that drives scale for any Google Ads account is the average order value, which in this situation, we were able to increase it to roughly $70. But taking a step back, the main thing that we approached this brand with, the main mindset, was to build such a strong foundation that no amount of competitors, no matter what their pricing was, no matter what their bidding strategy or the amount they were bidding was, could impact us. And that's why we started with the Google Merchant Center approach for this brand and the specific domains. Because see, the thing is, when this brand came to us specifically, one of the main issues they were dealing with was a faulty Google Merchant Center account, which was essentially the main reason why it wasn't even approved, and a domain link issue, which basically put it at the bottom of the roster in terms of Google's eyes and the authority it had built with Google. And this is something most brands completely disregard, because they don't take things like the overall shop quality within the Google Merchant Center seriously, or they let issues with the domains like linking issues or security issues just kind of fall in the background because they don't seem important at the moment. Eventually, Google takes that into account and it negatively impacts something called the quality score of your ad account, which is basically what the situation was here. So the main kind of focus point for us was not necessarily going in and launching the best campaign approach. It was more so structuring the foundation in a way where we were able to build the authority one more time for this brand and get a real presence established within the US market, because prior to us entering within this ad account, there was $0 spend in the US market. And this is something that can be useful for any brand that is just getting Google Ads established for their brand, or they're maybe entering a brand new market. Because the thing is, you don't want to just start in a brand new market without having proper data, without having proper insights in place. So what we did for this brand, and it's the same thing we do for any other brand which we work with, which, by the way, if you run a brand making over $50,000 a month in revenue and you want to scale profitably and consistently prior to Q4 with Google Ads, scan the QR code on the screen or click the first link in the description below to directly schedule a call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together to make that happen. But the very first thing we always do, that's the same thing we did here, was to do a little bit of keyword research to understand, number one, how is this US market searching for those products and those keywords, and how is that different from what the Canadian market or the Australian market was initially searching for. So what we did, and this is just an example to keep it very broad, we searched up the main keyword that was converting very well within the Canadian market. So essentially using the previous data we already had to then start establishing a baseline of how we wanted to approach a completely different country, a completely different market. And what we came to realize is, number one, we realized that the overall search demand was decreasing within the US market, specifically for keywords that were a bit more broader, because as we can see in the last 24 months, starting in 2024, there was a decline which could be very easily seen. And number two, what we wanted to understand was, how does the overall search volume trend month over month? Are there any peaks? Are there any drops? And this let us know how to best approach things, because right now, basically last year, at least in July of 2025 to August, we saw that there was an increase in demand, which meant we could be a bit more aggressive in our scaling strategies. We could be a bit more aggressive with our campaign approach without really going unprofitable. Because if we were to approach this brand in August and September when there's a decline, the approach would be much, much different. And this is the first idea that we got, which then helped us go into the first chapter of building a very strong foundation for this brand, which is essentially the product feed and the landing page experience. And any approach we take with Google Ads, or just as an e-commerce in general, is based around the quality score formula when it comes to Google Ads. And the quality score formula doesn't just apply to Google Ads. It's something you can take and derive and basically build a solid business around for anything you do, whether it be Meta ads, TikTok ads, doesn't matter. The quality score formula is based off of three things. First is the landing page experience. Second is expected CTRs, meaning what is the expected CTR of your ads based on previous data, but also how you have laid out your product images right now, for example, your product titles, so on and so forth. And third is the ad relevance. If you're trying to sell stickers, are you ranking for a completely different and irrelevant keyword? Because relevance is what makes people stay on your website longer. It's what makes them click buttons on your website, and then it's what makes them convert eventually. So this three-step formula is essentially what we want to address in the start, in the first chapter, with the foundation and with the product feed as well. So what we did is, in terms of the product feed and the Google Merchant Center, we kept things fairly simple. We did a bit of analysis within the market to understand how are the overall competitors laying out their ads, meaning their images, titles, and everything in between. Basically, the product itself is the ad, with Google Shopping and with Google Search is the keywords, the slang words they're using. And number two, how can we do the opposite? So what we realized for the specific keywords we wanted to target was majority of these brands had similar approaches like this one right here, where, for example, it was on a grayish background or a plain white background, where it was just showcasing the product individually. And again, this keyword is a very broad keyword, which we don't necessarily target, but it relates to the niche in general. And from there, we laid out an initial product image strategy, choosing specific images which would let us be the opposite of the competition, which allowed us to then focus on the main KPI, which is a CTR of about 0.75% to 1% and beyond. And once we were able to achieve that, which we noticed basically in the first day of running campaigns, we noticed that we were able to not only spend some amounts of money, because in the start, no matter how much budget you start with, we started with the $100 a day budget. The Google Ads algorithm was not really optimized to the level where it could spend that amount. So it started with spending a couple of dollars a day, but we were able to see some initial positive traction. I mean, on the first day, we spent $3 and made back $6 with just with these products alone. And that's kind of what let us know that this strategy was ideal. But second was our approach for product titles. Our product title strategy has remained the same throughout the years. It's essentially high perceived value, increasing keywords at the very start, followed by the SEO keywords, meaning what are people actually searching for? We do keyword research to understand the specific keywords, and especially when we're entering a brand new market like this, we don't have previous data to back it up. We have to go with our gut instinct based on what's the most relevant, what can lead to the most or the highest expected CTRs based on their relevancy, and then insert that in the middle like a sandwich. And then the third and most important part is essentially our branding and authority keywords. So in this situation, the brand name itself is what we added at the very end. Very simple formula, very straightforward. And that's essentially what allowed us to not only play with the quality score formula itself, but also to get some initial keywords in place that allowed us to then move on to the second chapter, which is the campaign structure. Now, what most brands don't realize is when you are struggling with Google Ads, when you have a lot of branded searches coming up, and that's basically all you're doing, you're not even going after new customer acquisition, it's literally just mostly branded traffic, your campaign structure can be detrimental to your overall growth, because if you don't have a little bit of expansion-based strategies in place along with scaling strategies, more often than not, your scale will be full-on dependent on those branded traffic keywords or on that retargeting aspect of your brand. And as a result, you will more often than not build a brand that just doesn't know how to go after new customers. And this is when you got those fluctuations. You feel like a roller coaster where one good day is followed by two bad, and you just don't know how to scale because every time you scale, ROAS comes crashing down. And in this situation, to avoid that, we started with the expansion strategy, which by the way is one of the reasons why we're at 15,000 keywords ranked in just the first month of June, despite spending a small amount of money on a day-to-day basis. It's that we didn't want that situation to happen for this brand. So essentially, the campaign structure was focused on the main goal behind profitable expansion. That was essentially the main goal for this brand. And in order to make that happen, we implemented something called the bidding on steroids approach, which essentially it was a little bit of performance max campaigns, a little bit of standard shopping, and a whole lot of search campaigns focused on expansion. So to kind of elaborate a bit on this, the bidding on steroids campaign approach is derived from the fact that we have a performance max campaign, which is also acting as a standard shopping campaign, because in this situation, we just added an asset group with some imagery and whatnot. But initially when we started this campaign, it was a feed only approach, meaning only going after the products. And the interesting part is the same products that are active inside this campaign, this PMAX, are the same ones active in both of these standard shopping campaigns. So in a normal situation, you might think that this is causing overlap, this is causing internal bidding, because all of these are essentially smart bidding campaign strategies as we see right here. But the thing is, we wanted initially to put the bidding on steroids. So we wanted all of these campaigns to enter this same exact auction for relevant keywords, but with steroids. So if, for example, this one performance max campaign failed to win that auction and failed to rank our products high, then maybe these other two standard shopping campaigns, because they were also smart bidding, could go in behind that as a bunch of soldiers behind the general and try to win that war, try to win that auction by ranking for those specific keywords which were relevant. And that's essentially the whole goal behind having the same products inside multiple smart bidding based campaigns, especially in a new market. You want to win as many auctions as possible for good keywords and relevant keywords, so you can get data rather quickly. You can increase the number of conversions coming through the door, because this then lets the algorithm get enough data so it can become smarter at a faster rate. That was essentially the main goal. We started initially with just $100 a day budget spread out across all of these different campaigns. And initially we just launched these two campaigns at the start, just the performance max and the standard shopping, with this branded search campaign, because again, we didn't want to completely disregard branded search. We wanted to build that brand authority and get those easy sales from branded traffic, so that on the back end, the algorithm could go deep inside that sale that just came through, derive all of the important information such as what their demographic is, where they're from, what's their zip code, so on and so forth, and then help drive more sales for our other expansion-based campaigns, which eventually came into play later on in the middle of June and even at the end of June. So essentially from this campaign approach, what we came to realize that, hey, performance max campaign is working great. The standard shopping campaign is also pretty decent, running at a 2.6x ROAS, but smart bidding is working at an exceptional level, because again, in these just first few days of running smart bidding and just these campaigns, what we were able to understand is we are now getting some days where we're spending essentially $10 to get $800 in revenue. We had a 36x ROAS day, essentially just a few days after running our first initial campaigns. And this is the power of running a campaign that's built off of a strong foundation, not the other way around. Most brands struggle with this, even the brands we audit regularly, because they do it the opposite way. They focus so much on getting campaigns launched quickly because they think results should come quickly, which in this situation, as we see, they can, that they forget to understand that all of these ROAS values, all of this scale is purely dependent on first establishing a foundation that can support this level of scale and this level of revenue. I mean, from the 11th of June, just a few days later, we already had a $2,000 in revenue, less than 2 weeks later. And this is the power of Google Ads. But once we had this initial traction, once we knew that, hey, we can achieve some decent level of traction with Google Ads, that's when we then diverted our attention into the expansion category, where we launched a search campaign, which is an AI Max search campaign. I have a whole video on AI Max, how to launch this, but this was was recently launched. It's only spent about $275 so far, running at about a $43 per day ad spend basis. But so far it's gotten 4 conversions. But if we now change this to the last 14 days, for example, this AMX campaign has now started to spend a lot more money. The ROAS has started to increase because this campaign was launched with the goal of profitable expansion. That's literally it. We have campaigns running right now which are focused on a little bit of branded traffic, focused on a little bit of regeneration in terms of retargeting. But now it's all about expansion to a whole new market within the US industry, because again, this is a new market where we're not necessarily sure what keywords we can rank for, what can get us the most sales. And this AI expansion campaign, which is also profitable, but we didn't want it to be profitable to begin with. That was not the main intention behind it. It only ended up being so profitable because of our foundation and how we structured that. But now that it's profitable, the main goal for it is to lead us on an accounts level to more keywords, which we didn't even know existed for this brand. But now that we have a solid base in play, now it's all about scaling. So the way we are scaling is we already established a base with horizontal scale. There's 2 ways to scale any Google Ads account, any e-commerce brand. First is vertical scale, and second is horizontal scale. For this brand, we already established a little bit of horizontal scale in the start by establishing a 4 or 5 campaign approach that goes after a little bit of search, that goes after a little bit of standard shopping and PMAX, and there's very little extra horizontal scale we can achieve here, maybe with a video-based campaign, maybe with demand gen campaigns for just pure demand focus. But beyond that, our profitable expansion is already in play. Now it's all about vertical scale, because see, the thing is, initially in the month of June when we started, we had started out with the goal of spending $100 a day, but very quickly in the last few days we have 6x that budget to now roughly $600 a day budget that we are looking to spend. And the only way we were able to do that is by consistently every 3, 5, 7 days going in and focusing on a reward punishment based scaling system, which rewarding essentially means if we are profitable and we're making more money, we want to go in and increase the budgets by 5% to 15% every 3, 5, 7 days. And we want to decrease restrictions slowly. So for example, if we see that, hey, this campaign right here, it's doing exceptionally well, but it's not spending the $150 a day budget. For example, in the last few days, we can see that the $150 a day budget has now dropped to maybe $6 or maybe $3. That lets us know that the bidding strategy is what's holding this campaign back. It's not able to profitably expand. So if we want this campaign to spend more money, the easiest way to reward it is by decreasing the target ROAS, target CPA metrics we have in place. And the second way is to then increase the budgets overall by 5% to 15%. But of course, it doesn't make sense to increase that if it's not even spending the whole daily budget to begin with. But it's that simple. Reward punishment. If things start tanking and if the ROAS is not there, if it's not hitting our KPIs, we punish it by decreasing the budgets or by increasing the ROAS targets. And we only choose the specific scaling metrics and the specific scaling strategies based on what's already proven to work. And in a situation like this where we essentially don't have much data to begin with, we almost always start with the shopping expansion along with a little bit of search expansion to get the ball rolling. But the key here is to keep things simple. Figure out that one major placement, figure out that one major platform. It could be either YouTube placements, or it could be either shopping placements or search placements. Double down on that, push 80% of your budget on that first until it establishes itself, until you're getting a decent level of traction. You're doing a couple $1,000s a day in revenue or ad spend. And from there, expanding horizontally. That's the only way we decide scale. The benefit was we already had expanded horizontally here because the brand had already proven itself in a little bit in the Australian market. And we knew that all we had to do here was just to get the right keywords coming in and then push the budget significantly to a higher level where it makes sense to kind of push overall spend at the top level once things were more profitable. But to kind of recap, the main 3 chapters we always go with for any brand include the first chapter, which is establishing that strong foundation, the Google Merchant Center, followed by the product feed itself, because the signals we send to the backend are more important than any buttons you click within your Google Ads account, any campaigns you launch. And that should naturally, once that's established, lead you to the second chapter, which is the campaign structure, establishing that core 80-20 rule where 80% of your budget should be going towards what's already working and 20% should be for the testing, the expansion, so on and so forth, which chapter 3, scaling, should only be introduced when things are profitable, when you're already making money and you know what's truly working. Because the thing is, the products that this brand sold is nothing special and the average order value is pretty basic. In fact, I would even say it's on the lower end. But the reason why most brands struggle, even at this level or even higher levels where they should not even be struggling to begin with, is purely because they take the top-down approach instead of the bottom-up approach. Once you build that solid foundation which only focuses on numbers and only focuses on the reward punishment system, that's when you can actually begin scaling. Which, if you run a brand making $50,000 a month or more in revenue, you would rather get some extra help scaling your brand to the next level. We're currently doing completely free Google Ads audits because we have a little bit of extra time. For brands like yours, just scan the QR code on the screen or click the first link in the description below, where you will directly hop on a call with me and we'll go over all the potential problems in your account preventing scale, potential solutions, and then if it makes sense, how we can potentially work together to make all of it happen.